Hello to everyone out there tuning in for another Masterclass session. Today, we're catering to our power users by creating a frozen cavern using the fantasy regional style, a map not too dissimilar from the one that you see right in front of you. Now, making an isometric battle map can be quite challenging, but with a solid process and some tips and tricks, you can make a fully functional and practical isometric battle map. Hey, Typher Zero, glad that you are here. Now, I don't know how everyone's feeling, but I'm getting rather excited for the 2.0 launch that is coming on December 8th. That's going to be Monday of next week. So that's just around the corner. I'm super excited about that. And we're going to have tons of videos and content covering the 2.0 editor. That means covering it tools, the layers, everything, so that way you can more easily navigate the tool. So I'm super excited about those things. So let's not waste any time. We're just going to go ahead and jump right in. Like I said, I'm going to make a map not too dissimilar from this one. I had some ideas in my head as I was kind of putting this together, and I want to use some of those same concepts for the one that we're going to create. This overall concept is that your players are being dragged into a dungeon to look for something called a sunstone. These sunstones are magical like stones that radiate magical type of heat. And the objective is for your players to go in and to retrieve one of the sunstones, and you can see that it's attached here to the shield on top of this statue right here. And so there is this central pyre that's right here, kind of somewhat center, little off center to the room. And this pyre basically is where your players can stay warm and they can be protected from enemies. If they leave this kind of warmed circle, this magical circle here, then they can either get frozen, it might diminish their movement, it might have some other negative effects on your players. So this should add a little bit more challenge. It adds an objective to the encounter to retrieve those sunstones. I've even included some orc-like creatures in here just to kind of help a little bit with scale. There's also other things like the skeletons here, but this is the overall concept of the idea is your players are perhaps they've been hired by the Sun Cult or the Sun Guild of some kind to retrieve these stones, while these snow orcs or frost orcs have somehow taken over the cavern and are protecting the sunstone from anyone coming in and taking it. So that's overall the concept that we're going to be working with. First, we'll create a new map. Of course, we're going to go with fantasy regional style. We'll choose it. And we're going to go ahead and just label it Frozen Cavern. And we're going to go with the Ultra 4K editing. This is just so that you got this nice, crisp, clear editing when you're editing in the editor. If you have a lower end machine or maybe not as powerful as an internet connection, then you might want to consider editing in 2 or 3K. Just know that that will affect the editing, so you will see a little bit more blurry in the lower editing resolutions. Like I said, if you have a strong machine, Ultra 4K is going to work out great. I'm going to go with a custom as well. Now you can change the grid when you open up the map, but let's just take away one step right away when we get into the editor by just changing it to 20 by 15. That's going to be half. And the reason why I'm going with this is because if each cell is 5 feet, then that means that something with 40 cells might be too big of a battle map. And with isometric, I kind of find that the larger the isometric map, this is just for me personally, they become a little less practical. So using a grid that's a little bit smaller, 20 by 15 might work better for this instance. So we'll go ahead and create the map, let that load. Hey Alice, glad that you're here. Hey Santum, and hey Bitter Dan. Sweet, some of my favorite people are here. I love to see it. All right, so first, what we should probably do is we should designate the area or the ground area, and I'll turn on the grid first just so that we can kind of see the grid, and I'll even change the grid color to white for right now. And then I'll also turn off the shadows as they're just not necessary. We'll start with that. And I'll go ahead and what I want to do here, hey, Becca, glad that you are here, and rebuilt the zeal. Awesome. So many good faces. I love it. Great. So what I'll do is I want to create a positive space in which the players will be moving around. And there's a couple tricks that I use when making sure that I'm not obstructing the walkable area for the players. So just a couple important things. The first one that I try not to do is I try not to have any tall objects that are going to be in this space like this. And the reason why is because that object is going to get in the way of the walkable space. So you don't put tall objects in the front. You can put tall objects in this area, like right here. This way, it doesn't obstruct the movability of your players. So to make an isometric battle map that's functional, you have to factor in this very important principle that you're going to have less walking room because it isn't top-down orthographic, flat, right? It's like a bird's eye view. But when you're working with isometric, things that are high up or taller can obstruct the player's ability to move around. So just remember this simple rule that you want to have tall objects in the back and you want to have shorter objects in the front of the canvas. And that's this area here. This way, it will be easier for you to have your players maneuver and move around. Once I've kind of established that, then I can just kind of make this space in which where the cavern will be like this. And you can make it any way that you want. It doesn't have to be made with a path. It's just whatever you want. So inside of this shape is where the players are going to move around. So move around within here like this. And then this shape, this part out here is going to be where we're going to place like walls, maybe some glaciers, statues, whatever it might be. And in that space, we're going to frame basically the walkable area. So let's go about how we're going to do that. So I've already kind of established where my walkable space is. There's a couple things that we can do. Let's push this down to the lowest layer, layer -5 for now. And then also I'll go into the catalog here. And why don't we choose those glaciers? I believe they're glaciers. Oh, I think they're called icebergs. Let's try that. There we go. Icebergs are right there. Perfect. We're going to scale these up. Let's just kind of scroll through with the mouse scroll wheel. You can hold down the Alt or Command key, and then with your mouse scroll wheel, you can scroll through a stamp set, which is kind of helpful instead of having to go over here and select one individually. So that's helpful. And I'll select each one of these. And the one that I'm going to be choosing will kind of determine the overall shape. Like this one right here works in this corner because it has a flat shape on the side there. So that looks good there. I can go ahead and scroll through and try to find another one. I think this one kind of looks good there. This one, let's just kind of keep scrolling through. We'll see which ones work best. That one kind of works there. I don't want to take up too much space over there. This one looks good there, there. Some of them you won't even be able to see. But we're just going to fill in this space. And remember, the objective is simply don't have stamps like this in the front blocking the walkability here. So this is why we don't choose one like this. Instead, we might want to choose a smaller piece like this so it doesn't get in the way. Same thing here. I'll choose these smaller ones here. Here, just bring the size down like this. And then this shouldn't block too much of the walkway here because you want it to be functional. That, to me, is the hard part, is making sure that it's functional. I'm also going to take the grid and I'm going to push it all the way down to layer -5 so that way the grid doesn't overlay on top of my stamps. It's just going to be on the bottom like that. Okay. Yes, you used to be able... I did notice this as well, Rebuild the Zeal. You used to be able to scroll infinitely through them, and now I've noticed that when you get to the end of the set, it stops, and then you have to scroll in reverse to go back to the beginning again. I don't know if that's the intended behavior or not. I'll go ahead and address the developers and see if it is. Honestly, I kind of find the infinite scroll to be more useful than to scroll back and forth, because I feel like it's just easier to access. So we'll talk about that and see if we can get that fixed, okay? Or at least we can find out whether that's the intended behavior or not. Okay, so now that that's been kind of put together, I like to then choose some kind of entrance, like how did we get in? So why don't I push this down a little bit more so you can kind of see it. Let's push this one down a little bit more. I want to be able to see some of the back walls a little bit more. So that's fine, some back walls there. Let's move this one this way a little bit more. There we go. And then this piece right here can move just a little bit because it's kind of blocking. And then let's just delete this one. We don't need it. Let's push it that way. And then let's also choose the entrance. Whenever I'm working on a map, I always try to have what's called access, like how is it the players get into this area. So we'll create a little cave door right here in which the players will be able to enter the cave. And I'm putting it on the backside of the map so that players can kind of see it. It's kind of harder to see a cavern entrance or a door on this side unless you kind of leave it open. See how that open space in between those two icebergs there? That would kind of represent a way to get out. I'm going to have this be a closed cavern, a closed shape, so we're not going to have any shapes that are going to go in. So this is the only entrance and exit. It's going to be right here like this, so that looks good. I might want to even change it up. Let's push this a little bit more in this way. That way it changes up the shape a bit more. Let's push this one in a little bit more this way. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Let's also choose a texture for the ground. Let's just go ahead and use this deep blue ice. It doesn't necessarily have to be ice, but it should work. So let's go ahead and do some adjustments. If you scroll down, you'll see there's this adjustment settings, placement, and color. This will change with 2.0, and don't worry, we will go over every single thing in the 2.0 editor. I'm super excited. Again, that gets released on Monday. Let's go ahead and change the texture scale so it's a little bit bigger. You'll notice that it repeats the smaller it gets. So making it a little bit bigger can remove that repeating texture. And then I'll go ahead and just apply it. And you can just also just go to fill. Just go fill, and it should select the entire thing. Next, I'm going to select every single stamp that I have and change that blend mode to luminosity so that way it all picks up that same bluish color as the background beneath it. And then I might want to make some adjustments as well. Why don't we, this right here, why don't we move this back piece here and put this one here? I might want to consider also maybe rotating it. Let's flip it this way. Does that look better? No, I think I like it a little bit better this way. Let's also change some adjustments to tweak the colors. So if I go up here and go to tweak colors, I'll be able to change the contrast a little bit. That way it kind of matches a little bit. And that way it all kind of matches quite well. So we have an entrance now. Always think about access. We have our walkable areas been framed off so that way we have that walkable space. We have that entrance. Once I've done this, then I go on to the next step. I'm going to create some kind of centerpiece. And the centerpiece could be anything. It could be maybe some wooden like scaffolding up against a wall. It could be a rock with maybe a fire on it. It could be a camp. It could be whatever you want. But that centerpiece or focal point is where the players are probably going to want to go to solve whatever problem or where the end game is for this encounter. If they want to go up and grab that sunstone. So we probably want to create some kind of space in which the players can access the sunstone. Why don't we build some internal walls to separate so that way it looks like it's more than just a giant singular room. So I think I'll go back and select these icebergs real quick. Go back to luminosity here. And then I'll go ahead and place one right here, another one like maybe right here, and maybe another one right there looks good. And right now you're starting to see it creates kind of a wall. There we go. That looks good. Why don't we create another one just right there like that? There we go. So now we have kind of these separate kind of locations. So when you first walk in, there's kind of a wall here that can take you into this enclosed area right here, or the enclosed area down here. So this should make it more interesting instead of this giant open room. I think that makes it look a little bit nicer. That looks good. Why don't we also line some of the walls with some stuff too, actually. Let's try that. Let's go with those keys. I know I pronounced them wrong in a previous episode. Okay, let's also choose that blend mode to luminosity. And then I'm just going to go ahead and place these right along here just so that we have a little bit more interesting kind of shapes. in here. Let's go with another one going across like this. That looks good. Okay. That should make that area a little bit more distinct looking, a little bit more interesting than this other area over here by adding that part in there. I think that looks good. Let's add in maybe a piece. Let's move this out of the way. There we go. And then we can put another piece like right there. That looks good. Okay. Let's just keep on adding a couple more of these pieces. Let's maybe put one right there. Push it up a layer. I'm not sure if that will look good there or not. Nope, not really. Okay, but at least this looks nice over here. Let's go ahead and I was mentioning a focal point, so let's go ahead and create that. Let's go ahead and use these plateau rocks, or these boulders, I think they're called, and these work really well. These right here. Some of these are flat, like this one right here has a flat top. That works really well. This one right here works well. This one, like any of these kind of more flat kind of top pieces right here, I feel that these work particularly well to place things on top of. Like maybe you want to create a series of terrain that your players can like climb up. This is a great way to do it using these type of rocks right here. Just make sure that when you use them, just make sure that you use the ones that have more of the flatter tops. There are ones that are like this one right here and this one right here. These ones might not be quite as helpful or functional, but that's up to you. So I should create that focal point. I'll use this nice big flat stone like right here, like this. This should work well. Or I can also use a mesa. Let's go ahead and place one there just so I have it. And let's also try a mesa. That should work. This should create a little bit more depth. Like let's place a mesa right there. Let's go ahead and scale it down a little bit. I want players to go up on top of this mesa right here where they're going to access something. Let me just make sure that it's well placed. That looks good. Let's change that blend mode. I want it to all have this very icy kind of feel to it, so that will be nice. That looks good. Why don't we stretch this out so a little bit more walking space up top right here, and it can cover up this back wall right here because the players, what we'll do is we'll have the focal point be up here on top of this rock. There's no need to go behind the rock, so that way that should make up for that problem there. Okay, let's go with that. Let's also create a way access points. Like the thing that we want to get is going to be up on top of here, so let's create access to get there. And we can do a couple things here. We can use a series of these mesas to create a series of like steps that kind of go up. So let's create another one right here like this. Let's go with that blend mode luminosity. That looks good. One right there. That looks good. And this little trick that I like to do that I think really works really well is that you can create steps or layers. So let's go ahead and put this one right here. This is going to be a step going up, and then we'll create another one, a smaller one. Let's see if I can find the right one. This one right here. And we'll place this one right here like this. There we go. Oopsie. For some reason, it's not saving that. Let's go back. Blend mode luminosity. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Okay. And then from here, I'm going to use clipping masks with the shape tool or the line tool to create a flat space up top here. So I'll show you how I go about doing this. There's a couple ways. You could use a fill. Let's turn off the stroke. Let's go with a clipping mask fill here. This will change to when we do 2.0. We'll go over the layers and stuff. That will be exciting. But let's go ahead and choose our fill, a clipping mask for now. I'm also going to change the blur, so that way it's blurry on the edges. And then I'll also use this pen right here. And I'm just going to go up on the top, just on the top of this thing. And we're going to create a shape. It's going to go on top like this. There we go. Press go add like this. There we go. Let's go push this up a layer to make sure it's on the right layer. There we go. Let's also bring that blur so those edges are nice and blurry. And then when I go I'll go ahead and use this lighter blue FG layer, and then here is a flat space for your players to walk on top of. Let's also do the same thing to every single one of these as well. One right here as well. Like this, just go plus, go add. It will have to go up a layer. There we go. And then let's put another one right over here like this. And then I'll show you the last trick to kind of connect all of these flat pieces together so that way you can create like a little ramp that leads up to it. So we have that. Let's go ahead and add the textures. There we go. That leads up. And then we'll go ahead and this time I'll use the brush like this. And I'll create a space that kind of go down like this, that goes up to there. And I'll create another space that goes up to here like that. And then I'll create another space that leads up like that. There we go. Okay. And I'm using a lighter color of the ice so that way you can show that it's kind of separate from the bottom layer there. So you climb up, your players would climb up, 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 up into this space right here like this. So this is a great way to create depth with fantasy regional maps, is taking these mesas or a mountain and then putting a clipping mask on top of them. And then you can get a much more interesting sense of depth in your map. Because one thing I've noticed a lot about regional battle maps is they're always generally pretty flat. So this technique of using clipping masks and some kind of mountain or mesa or a hill to create a flat surface is just the best way that I know of on how to create a series of different levels and height. Because again, so many regional battle maps are somewhat flat. So this technique should really, really help with that. Okay. Now that we've kind of put that together, we can kind of take these things and kind of place something on top. So I think we should do what we did last time. We'll just use a statue of some kind. And we'll go ahead and use, let's go use, there's a whole bunch of them here. Let me go ahead and expand all assets here, and you'll see there's a lot to choose from here. Let's use this one right here. This one kind of works the best, I think. And one thing I'm also kind of noticing is that I need to push this up a couple layers, and I'm going to go ahead and lock this stuff right here so that I can select all of this stuff right here and kind of push this down a little bit. There we go. I think right about here. I want the problem that I'm facing is that the statue is kind of going off screen like that, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm pushing it down a little bit so at least the whole statue can be seen there. That looks good. I'm even going to rotate it to look like it kind of sunk in a little bit there. And then I'm also going to maybe throw in some crystals or something like that to make it a little bit more interesting. I can even use more of these to make them look like they're icicles kind of growing up and around the statue. You don't have to do that. Let's go with using some crystals for this. These blue ones will work just fine. And I'm going to change the blend mode to lighten so that way it's going to hide the line work, the darker line work of the stamp, but it will also make it transparent. So if I place this in front of it, you'll notice that I could still see the statue behind it because I'm using a lighten blend mode. And so I can kind of place these kind of crystals just like this. Let's also put one maybe behind like this. Maybe another one right here like this. Let's push that back a layer like that. And then we can, this way it kind of looks like it's engulfing the statue a little bit. We'll also desaturate it. Oopsie, not that. We'll desaturate the statue. Or we can give it a color if you want to as well. We could bump the saturation all the way up. If you move to the far left of the hue slider or the far right, you can generally get a blue color. It's not always the case, but you can, or you can just completely desaturate it. There we go. Give it that whitish color. Okay, let's also create the sunstone that's going to be on the shield itself. I'm going to go into a different style altogether for this. I'm going to go into Fantasy Battle Maps and just type in gem. Now, one thing about the gem is it's top down. When you look at it, it's perfectly circular or somewhat circular. We're going to want to change that to do some foreshortening so that that way it looks more like an oval. And I'll show you the way that you're going to do about that. To do foreshortening with this, just make sure that the stamp is set to 0 degrees. And then when you select it, you'll notice these hotbars. See what happens when I move a degree? The hotbars go away. So at 0 degrees, I can go ahead and do some foreshortening by transforming like this. And then I'll also turn off that shadow as I don't need it. Right here, we'll go to none. And then when I place the gem and I rotate it just like this, it's going to have that more oval-like shape, which is what you would kind of expect. You're just doing some foreshortening. Just remember to make sure that the stamp is set to 0 degrees for those hotbars to show up. Otherwise, you're going to have some trouble there, okay? All right, so I've put together the focal point right here. Your players are going to have to walk around here, encounter something in this main chamber here, and then make their way to the crystal right here. Now, the other thing that I kind of noticed that I had is that there was a fire, a kind of a sacred fire that kind of keeps your players from freezing to death or freezing, or maybe there's some negative status ailment that occurs, like maybe your player's movement is decreased because of the cold, or maybe certain actions become unavailable because of the cold. So some things like that. Why don't we go back to Fantasy Regional? And then I'll go ahead and type in camp. There should be a campfire. Let's go ahead and use this. And I have that nice grid already set up for me. So why don't I place this? Let's place it like right here in more of a central location. See how it's kind of central to this area right here. So I think that looks good. And then I'll also consider changing the texture to show that the flame is causing the ground to thaw. Why don't we take this? We'll select back BG layer. We'll bring the opacity down. I'm going to use the brush, and I'm bringing the opacity down to about 30. I'm also going to use a pen, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint this texture just right underneath like this. And the further away you get from the flame, the less of that ground texture should be there because of the thawing. And the closer that you get, the more of that brown or whatever texture you're using, it should show up next to the fire because it's thawing out, right? So the closer you get to the fire, the more of that brown texture is there. The further that you get away from it, the less of that texture is there to show that this area is thawing out, okay? So that's kind of important to kind of remember that. So now that we have that there, that looks good. Let's go ahead and create some things for your players to kind of interact with. Remember, we had some of those, these rocks right here. These work great for, let's say that your players want to jump on top of it and use it for a height advantage, or maybe they want to trip an enemy over the rock, or maybe it will give them some advantage in some way or the other. But having environmental things that your players can interact with makes combat so much more interesting. So I'll create several areas of these kind of raised rock-like areas. We'll change the blend mode to luminosity. And then I'm going to use these as something the players can kind of work with. So I'll place one there. And just remember that kind of rule. Remember to don't use tall ones like this in the middle, because you see how it blocks the tiles behind it. But this one right here is flatter. And so it doesn't block quite as much as the tile behind it, still making it much more functional. So it's an important thing to kind of remember not to use taller rocks that don't block your player's maneuverability. So let's just place a couple rocks along the ledge here to create a little bit more transition. So I'll put some rocks along here like this. I might even want to consider making them a little bit brighter. So let's go over to those options there and bring the brightness up. There we go. And then I'll take these stones and I'm going to line some of the walls. Like I think that one should look good there. Let's also grab maybe this one. That looks good. We'll place a couple right here. Let's also place some up along here as well. Like this one might look good right there. Okay, let's kind of place a couple more. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Let's go ahead and add a couple more rocks along this ledge here. I just want to create some transition. So putting some of these rocks here should make it a little bit more interesting. Let's place some here. Sometimes, let's see, I got a question in here. I'm curious if you have any sprites or anything that you could use to mark your players or enemies they are facing. Sure, yeah. There are some creatures that I use sometimes to kind of help me out with scale. We know we're not a VTT, so you can't really, play a game with Inkarnate, but I do use creatures. Like there are some humanoids, like down here, there are these humanoids right here, and these work well. Like you can use an orc, or you could use some kind of human creature. I think there are monsters as well. Let me just take a look here. There should be some like spiders and some other creatures that you can also use. Let's go use humanoids for now, just so that you have them there. And let's get the scale right. So 5 feet across, so right about there would equal about, that'd probably be close to about 6 feet right there, probably. Like this. And you don't have to, when I finally decide to play my game, I won't actually have these little characters on the map themselves. I just use them as scale or for enemy positioning. So that could make it more interesting. So what I'll do is I'll put some enemies in here just for some positioning. So let's go ahead and just place one over here, and then we'll place another one like over here, kind of guarding the entrance that kind of leads up to here. Remember, these are just more like, for me, these are more like DM notes to kind of let you know that they're where the positioning of the creatures are going to be. It's not necessarily going to work for like a VTT or anything like that. Yeah, so now this should help with like enemy positioning. So, and when you know your enemy positioning, it makes it a little bit easier. I'm glad that you, by the way, Mimics, glad that you, or Small Cake 1579, I'm glad that you asked that question, first time chatter, because sometimes placing a token where an enemy is supposed to be can sometimes help to guide you on what you should put in an area for like environmental details or things that to engage with. So because I have a creature here, right here, this kind of gives me an idea that when we go into the cavern here, they're facing in the other direction. That means you can go in for a sneak attack. So why don't we place some things on the ground there that your players can like either pick up a barrel or a crate and smash the enemy that's facing the other way's head in, or maybe there's some barrels and crates that you can hide behind of, and then maybe make a sound that will draw them to the party, and then you can attack them that way. So throwing in some environmental things will make it a little bit more interesting. Like for instance, I could put like maybe some logs right here, and then maybe the enemy is facing this way, like this. And then when the players kind of sneak up, they hide behind these stacks of logs right here, and they can attack the enemy. Or you could take a series of like rocks or whatever it might be, but throwing in a monster token just somewhere randomly on the map can help you to kind of understand what kind of objects you need to put into that area, because it's going to impact the encounter, right? So whatever it might be, like maybe the enemy is right here and your players can sneak up on top of this rock right here and then come down with a fancy daggers and attack the enemy there. So throwing in a monster token of some kind just to show where the positioning is can actually help you quite a bit. And I end up doing this sometimes when I'm making an encounter, just to kind of help me be like, okay, what should be in this area? So let's go over the stamps and kind of just look at my options here. I do like these ore crates right here. This might work well. Let's scale it to make it about the right size here. About there looks good. We could let's make some options for your players. They could pick up maybe some of these rocks right here and throw them to attack. They could jump on top of this rock and attack them and come on top of them that way. They could also, let's make another option as well. Let's see what other options we can choose from the players can do. Let's also maybe create a crate or a barrel. Let's put that somewhere in the map, and then maybe the players can also use this. So let's maybe put it on top of this right here. And maybe you could have it face like this. Maybe it'll roll and hit the enemy. Maybe they pick it up. Maybe they hide behind it, whatever it might be, right? So you have options here. Okay. Now, one thing you might notice is that all the stamps don't kind of like come together well. They all seem to kind of jump out, especially the warm and cools here. Notice that there's these nice warms from the brown wood, from the players, from these enemies right here. We're going to go ahead and fix that up so that it kind of all meshes together better. And that's what I use filters for. Filters are how I get to create more ambiance and to make the scene kind of come together better. So I'll create a filter, a new one, and we'll start with a simple filter like a winter filter, which would be very helpful. So if I go with winter like this, you'll notice that it puts a blue kind of coating on top of it that makes this browns, this warm colors, they don't pop out quite as much. Notice that that blue helps them to kind of blend better, kind of creating a little bit more there. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and looks like we've already got that autosave. Something that you might not have noticed, but down here at the bottom here, there we do have like some autosave option that kind of comes up that allows you to kind of autosave. That's coming up. But just so you know, there is a save manual option up here called save manually. So that way, if you find that your map is not saving for some reason or another, you just have to go to save manually and it will allow you to save the map manually. Because so this is a feature that will be included, I think that's been released now for studio users. I don't remember. I'd have to go ahead and check. And maybe it's still in EA. I can't recall. Okay. We'll go let that save. There you go. The way that blue blend works is pretty obvious. It's right here. It's a filter. It's this wand right here. Now, when 2.0 gets released, the new layers, the filters will be found on this side in this panel right here. So next week when it gets released, we're going to go over all of the new layer options, 2.0, everything, because it's going to be released on Monday. So I'm excited to kind of explain all of that. Since we're not there yet, I don't want to tease and be mean. So we're just using the 1.0 editor for now. But when 2.0 gets released, we are going to be using that moving forward. There won't be a 1.0 anymore. So just kind of keep that in mind, okay? Yes, just 5 more days away. I'm so excited. I can't wait for 2.0. It's been driving me crazy using 1.0 during my streams, but I don't want to keep showing off something that hasn't been released yet. So when that gets released, it's going to be all 2.0 from here. So I'm pretty excited about that. All right, so we'll go ahead and dive right back in. Thanks for bearing with me there on that little rant there. So again, we've created some options for your players to kind of interact with this creature right here, with this, whatever this monster will be. It doesn't have to be an archer. It can be whatever you want, right? Okay. All right, there you go. Pretty easy stuff. Okay, let's go into that next room. We'll add in more details later. What I generally end up doing is I just create the biggest pieces that are going to be in the area first. Notice that I started by using these giant icebergs right here, the biggest stamp first, and then I kind of, move my way down from large to small. And the reason why I do that, it's always important to start with your large stamps first, because this will determine the negative space or the space in which your players will move around. If you start placing small stamps first, it's going to be hard to figure out the proximity or the area in which your players are going to be moving around. And just as a little side note, it also can seem daunting because you haven't filled up much of the screen with stamps yet. So putting down the large stamps first allows you to make it look like you're getting more work done. It's filling up more space, and it'll allow you to figure out the negative space in which your players can move around. So you start with big stamps first, and then move your way down to the smaller stamps, so that way it's easier to do. I never start with details first. I start with large terrain stamps, and then move my way down the list to the smaller stamps. The details generally go last or near last. Doesn't always have to be last. Okay, so that area is done. Why don't we fill in this area right here with stuff so that players can kind of interact with? So let's kind of go over that. Let's make sure that my blend mode is already immediately set to luminosity. That's perfect. Why don't we create a little rock that goes right here? And this will kind of create a boundary between, let's put it right, let's use this flat one right here like this. We'll create a boundary, basically a natural boundary between this area over here and this area over here. So if I place a rock just right here like this, I'll have this extra thing that my players can kind of interact with right here. That looks good. Let's go ahead and push this up. Maybe they're even guarding this rock right here, or they're just using this for the height advantage, so that works out well. Let's go ahead and create some smaller ones, so that way there's some, that way it's just not one solo rock. Sometimes what I like to do is where you see one big rock, you see a bunch of other smaller rocks. Think of erosion, right? So if I have these larger rocks here, why don't I place some smaller random ones around like this, and I'll change the varying scales for that. So a bigger one, a smaller one here. And this is going to give it this feeling of being more natural. One thing that I've noticed in nature is that there's a variety of sizes and scales and different types of rocks, big, small, whatever. So if you have a big rock, maybe it's nice to put in some smaller rocks to go with it as well. So I'll just go ahead and place some smaller rocks along here, just so it's kind of matching in, one right there. Let's put these taller ones maybe along the face here, so it's a little bit more interesting. Let's go ahead and place another bigger one over here as well. Let's place this one like right here like that. There we go. That looks good. Let's place it right there. And then we'll place another one right here like this. There we go. Let's push it down a little bit more. Maybe right there looks good. There we go. Just to kind of fill in that space back there. Let's go with this one maybe. And then put another one right here like that. There we go. Got some rocks. Okay, some other great things that I like to use are, you can also use docks to create this sense of, like maybe scaffolding or something extra that your players can kind of interact with. Okay. I'm just going to put this kind of scaffolding, like line it up with the grid and then attach it to the rock. And then this will create like a space for players to kind of walk like this. Let's go ahead and create another one as well. Let's maybe have another one going like this way. Create like an L shape. Let's put this one behind, just like that. There we go. And now you have these kind of locations in which your player can kind of walk around. So I can walk on top of the rock right here, walk on top right here like this. And that should create some nice walkways, some things for your players to interact with is always nice. We could even move this one over to here if you want, like this, or we can move it over to here, like this, if you want it to be like that, just to create some extra walk space. And where you have one of them, maybe we can create a couple more as well. Like maybe we can create another one like right here, like this. And then maybe we can kind of break off a little bit, like maybe place one going across like this. That could create like a natural barrier between this space right here and this space if we want, or we could put it right here like this if you want it to create a natural barrier between this space right here. That's up to you. So there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of go about doing this. Just figure out which one you think looks the best. We could even do non-isometric, one that kind of goes like that instead. If you want to break up the isometric look like this, that should break it up a little bit, make it more interesting. That's up to you. Lots of different options there. Thank you to everyone, by the way, who in the chat who is answering questions for people. I appreciate you all doing that, as I cannot address it with the time frame that we have. So I appreciate all of you pitching in there and helping me out with that. Thank you. Okay. So we have some things that your players can kind of interact with. And also, it just makes it more interesting. Players can now interact with this kind of boardwalk right here. They'll be able to interact with the flame here, with these things. And where you see some of these ones, maybe we should create some more. Like maybe we should put some stones right there. Let's maybe place a couple over here, maybe a larger pile back over here. Maybe we can put one on top of the boardwalk, like on top of there. Let's maybe put another one right here like that. There we go. That way, where there is one, this will give your players tons of more options, right? Like if they want to go the stealthier path, they want to hide behind a rock and throw one of these rocks in this crate to get someone's attention, or if they just want to go in full-throated the barbarian way and pick up your elf and then launch them across, or the dwarf, and launch them across the cavern room to smack whatever this monster is right here, kind of blocking your way. So lots of options. Like I find that good encounters give your players options, right? They have the ability to choose between doing it this way or that way, whether they don't want to use the environment to their advantage at all, if they just want to go in, balls to the walls, whatever it might be, right? But players like options, not too much, but enough options so that your players can have fun and kind of decide how they want to approach the combat instead of just one specific option that your players have, like going in full-throated, or if they want to go the stealther route. All of those things I find quite helpful because I like to make my combat interesting for my players. Okay, you can see that it's auto-saving right down there where it says that 4K right there at the bottom. And then that will save. So you'll notice that I haven't had to do too much saving with the save button up here, the save manually, because it's automatically been saving. So that's helpful. Again, if the autosave fails on you, don't worry, there's a save manually. If it will absolutely not save though, you can also save an offline backup. That's also going to be in this hamburger menu here. So you just enable, or not that one, sorry. You just go to save offline backup. And then what it will do is it will save that offline backup. You can close out of the map. And then there's a button that will allow you to upload that offline backup. And then you should be able to save. So just kind of a heads up, if you encounter saving problems, always remember to save the offline backup. Or if you're using autosave and it won't save, there's this save manually right here. So kind of helpful. All right, we're at 46 after. We've been going for 46 minutes. Let's go ahead and throw in all the details, throw in more filters and everything because we want to add a little bit more. So let's go ahead and jump in there. Let's start by adding in some light sources. There aren't any light sources for fantasy regionals, so just go to fantasy battle maps and just type in light. There are these light sources here. Let's go ahead and start by stacking some light sources. Let's put an orange one just right there, right on top of the flame itself, just to give it that more yellowish, orangish color, because the flame is diminished a little bit from that filter that we use. So if I place that right on top like that, you'll notice that that flame is not quite as diminished. Let's also use another light stamp. Let's make it a little bit bigger, and we'll use the more yellow instead of the more orangish one. And I'm just going to place that right on top, just like that. There we go. So now we have this nice light source just right on top like that. Why don't we also, just to show that it's a magical flame, why don't we add like a summoning circle of some kind in that space? Let's go with this one. And just like before, remember we talked about foreshortening. Notice that when I put this down, it's like a perfect circle, right? So make sure it's set to 0. Grab that hotbar right there and just do some foreshortening like this. And then just use that as an option right there. And then we'll change that blend mode. There's a couple ones. We could choose lighten or screen. I find either one works fine. Let's go with lighten. I think that looks best. And then why don't we just bring the opacity down just a little bit. There we go. And now we have this nice summoning circle with the light emanating. And I think that works out quite well. So that looks good. Why don't we also throw in a couple more things to make it more magical? There's a great stamp in the Fantasy Battle Maps called Fey Lights right here. If you just type in Fey in the search bar when you're looking in Fantasy Battle Maps, or if you have Inkarnate selected, it will search every single stamp within the Inkarnate catalog. But we'll go with this Fey Lights right here. And I'll just kind of scroll through the one that I think that looks kind of best. This one right here has some big puffy kind of artifacts. So if I just kind of place that right there just like that, now I have this extra sense of kind of magic kind of coming from the flame there. And it contrasts well against the darker blue. So you have these cold, these blue cools here. And then you have this nice warm yellow oranges. And that's going to contrast really well against the cooler colors. So, and blue and yellow are very friendly colors. Blue and yellow work really well together. So I'm going to use those colors to make sure that the blue, or gold and blue, go really well together. Seeing a first time chatter here, we would glad that you're here. Glad that you're here. Awesome. Okay. You know what? We're at 50. We got 10 minutes till the end, but we can go on for a little bit longer. Let's keep adding the details that we mentioned. Let's put a light source by that sun gem or that sunstone that's right here, it kind of makes sense to put it by on the gem that's called a sunstone. So we want to have a light source on top of that as well. Let me push the gem down a layer. Let's take this light. We're going to copy and paste and put 2 lights right on top like that. There we go. And then you'll see this nice light emanating from that gemstone, and it makes it very clear that this is something important, right? It's glowing, it's got the light, it's also got the same glow and light that comes from the fire here. So perhaps these two, this flame right here from the fire and that sunstone are connected. They're important. Okay, sweet. So now we've added in that location. You can even add in some phthalites if you wanted, just to add in more of that magical kind of feel to it. Maybe we can find the smaller one. That one's a bit smaller. Let's go ahead and place it just right against there like that. Let me go ahead and rotate it. There we go. Make sure that you can kind of see it. There we go. Let's change that blend mode to lighten. Let's go with color dodge. Let me see. Color dodge looks pretty good. Let's put that there. There we go. That looks good. All right, sweet. That looks good. Okay. Let's add in some more details. Let's add a little bit more transition between the ground and the walls. You know, it works really great for creating a transition between the ground and the walls. Cracked ground. If I go to fantasy battle maps and just typed in cracked like this, there's this thing called cracked ground. This works perfect because we are in an icy, frozen light cavern. You're going to expect things to thaw, to melt, to erode. And to show that sense of erosion, what I'll do is I'll apply this cracked ground texture to wherever the base, wherever the floor meets the walls, right? So I'll bring the opacity up a little bit, and I'll just go ahead and apply this, and I can put a little bit of cracked ground all along the base here. And this cracked ground is going to create a nice transition between the ground and the wall. So I'll place some here. That looks good. Let's put some here as well. Ice cracks, right? It moves. An earthquake might occur and some ice might crack. There might be magic that's shifting the ice and the rock. It could be all kinds of things. So just kind of throwing in this cracked ground right here is a great way to create a little transition and to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'll place this cracked ground all in here like this. Like this. There we go. Okay, let's place them all along here. There we go. So now we have some cracked ground there. That looks good. Why don't we also put down another filter to bring out some more of the browns or the reddish colors? So why don't we add in like a red filter, like a red sky filter? Let's go with right over here, color filter. We're going to click in, create custom filter, and we'll go to red sky here. Okay, let's go ahead and turn it all the way off. So see how blue it is right here? I can bring this red up, and of course, when you add red with blue, you get purple. So if the more and more I add that red, it's going to diminish some of that blue and add a little bit of red to it, and it should make the reds and the warmer colors pop out a little bit more, making it more interesting. So here it is with just pure blue, that winter filter. But if I add a little bit of that red like that, that's going to help to bring out the reds and the oranges from the fire. It's going to bring out a little bit more of the red from the wooden pieces here. You'll notice that the players or the enemies here, tokens, they kind of bring it out. Let me turn it off a little bit so you can see it again. You see the difference? It adds in a little bit of red. And I think that is very, very helpful to add in that red. Makes it more interesting. There's a couple other filters we can add as well. A vignette is always a good choice. If we bump the vignette up to 100% and then we choose maybe the overlay blend mode, let me turn that off real quick. We can get the frame to be a bit of a darker blue because it's set to overlay, and then it makes that center part look like it's not quite as darker blue. So that should cause that center part to frame out a little bit more using that vignette. Let's use a couple more filters as well. Let's use a texture filter. There's quite a few textures that we could use here. Let's go click Inkarnate. By clicking the Inkarnate tag right here like this, it'll show you pretty much all of the filters, or at least it should. Took a little while to load, but by clicking Inkarnate like this, all of the filters from every single style will pop up. And there's a couple things that we might want to consider using here. If you're kind of confused with what each one is, you can also just go over to here and just go show names up here in the top right here. And now the name of each filter is there. Many of these filters are alphas or overlays. And so you won't be able to kind of see what they look like in the preview quite as much. Let's go with, there's a couple options here. We could use snow itself. This will add a little bit of white kind of snow inside of it. This could represent flakes from melting ice. This could represent maybe that there's a ceiling, there's some opening at the top with the snow coming down, or you just want to add some white snowish like artifacts to give it a little bit more interesting feel to it. So that's one thing that I like to use. You could use snow. It doesn't have to represent fallen snow. It could just be white artifacts that make the inside of the cavern more interesting. There's a couple other ones as well that we could use. I do believe there is a torn paper one, this paper tear. This also is nice. It can add some more white to it. Notice that you add some more white artifacts to the map, making it more interesting. Let me go ahead and just turn off it so you can see what it looks like with the paper tear. It adds in all these nice white kind of artifacts, making it a little bit more interesting. There you go. That looks good. There's a couple other things, filters you might want to consider. A clarity filter is always a good choice. Let's go ahead and just turn it off so you can kind of see it. But by bumping up that clarity, it should make the color pop out a little bit more. It'll make the stamps pop out a little bit more. What I don't recommend is going like 100% clarity. I recommend just maybe around, I usually go with about 40 or 50, but you can go as much as you want. It's a snow-like cavern. It's kind of frozen, so I expect the colors to be maybe a little bit more dull. I don't want it to be this really bright blue that you have there, so I'll bring that clarity down a little bit. I do want to use it, but I don't want it to go at 100%. So around 50 or so, that helps to kind of bring that out a little bit more. That looks a little bit nicer. There we go. Now, what I like to do here in this stage is I like to walk around starting at the entrance as if I was one of my players. And I'll just do a quick walk around or a little walkabout. And that little walkabout will help me to kind of understand where the players are going to go, what I should put in those areas, whether they're enemies or environmental challenges, whatever it might be. So this is something that I like to do to kind of help me out. So I'll take this line tool. You can use whatever line that you want. And what I'll do is I'll kind of create a little path and I'll just kind of walk around and just kind of see what my players can kind of interact with. So they kind of come in. This is the entrance right here. You'll notice that there are options in which the players can kind of interact with, right? Whether they want to throw a rock to distract them or just throw it at their head and hit them, whether they want to leap off and attack with daggers, or if they want to pick up the barrel and throw it at the person's head. All of those options are available, right? It's how I can quickly kind of figure out what's going to happen in each area. So I'll go ahead and delete those. There we go. Once your players have finished interacting with this area over here, they've maybe KO'd this person right here, they can kind of move their way into this next area right here. And in this next area, maybe we should put something in here that's going to make it clear that it's a magical fire. Like maybe there'll be an NPC sitting right here and they can't move. Maybe they're stuck in this cavern because they don't have a way to leave the fire. Like maybe they don't have a torch, or maybe they don't have some magic that allows them to leave. So some kind of NPC here that kind of explains what the fire is for, what it does, how it protects you. NPCs are a great way to kind of set the stage for what you should be doing. If you don't want to put an NPC, you can also put like maybe a little letter right here from a journal. Letters are super common in tabletop games to explain things, or even video games. You can do that if you want to use like a journal entry, a letter, a book, whatever it might be. Maybe the NPC right here, maybe this enemy right here, if you don't kill them right away, maybe they reveal the secret in their dying breath about the fire and how it's supposed to help you. So whatever it might be, right? But in this area right here is where your players are probably going to try to figure out the most of what's happening in this area. So kind of helpful, at least in my opinion. There's like a little dock right here. Maybe if there's an NPC here, your players can talk to them. Maybe there's something that you have to do with the rocks right here. Maybe they want to just sit right here by the fire and talk with the NPC. Maybe they want to go over here, interact with these pieces over here. Maybe they encounter the enemy and they can use these things in this area to interact with this person. Once they've cleared this main section here, they can then move their way here. They'll have to encounter maybe 1 or 2 creatures here that they have to fight. The reward is they'll climb up here and then grab that sunstone right there. That will be helpful. And then maybe even grabbing the sunstone will magically cause them to teleport back to here, so that way they don't have to backtrack, because players don't generally like backtracking. So maybe just grabbing the stone will teleport them back to the fire, and the only backtracking they have to do is maybe go out to the entrance here or whatever. So I find that quite helpful. Yes, teleport right into the fire, and maybe even the sunstone protects you from the flames. So as long as your players are all within the magical field of the sunstone that you've just grabbed off the statue there, it should protect you from the flames. Or maybe the flames don't actually harm living flesh. Maybe the flames only harm or only create warmth. So there's all these kind of things that you kind of do, but you get the general idea on kind of how I put things together, right? You always want to put the biggest stamps first and then move your way to the smallest ones. Make sure that you create all the walls, frame in the internal space in which your players are going to be moving around. Once you've framed in the rooms, then you can create a focal point. You'll notice that there's 2 of them, one right here and one right here. The 2 are connected with the sunstone and the flame there. Then once you've kind of put in those objects in here, then you can do a quick run, pretending you're one of the players walking around the map, so that way when you do it, you have at least some idea of what your players might do. They might pick up a stone, they might attack this way, they might cast a spell, they might kill every single thing inside of the cavern, including the NPC, because they don't like the look of their face or the way that they had their makeup on, or they didn't like their outfit or the way that they talked to them, whatever it might be. Murder hobos, right? So it's always kind of helpful to do a little run or a pass through the whole dungeon or whatever you're creating, so that way you have an idea of what your players might do, what details that you can throw into the dungeon that your players can kind of interact with. All of those things are kind of helpful, and you don't have to come up with an elaborate story for the encounter right away. Sometimes just creating the encounter first is more helpful than drafting the idea in your head, because sometimes I just use the encounter map itself to help me figure out how the encounter will be. Instead of mapping it all out in my mind first and then creating it, I'll create the cavern or create the map first, and then that way I have something to work with when I make the encounter on paper. So kind of helpful. All right, well, that is it for the stream. I hope you found this helpful. We do have a stream coming up on Friday. I'm going to show you how to make castle compositions, and we probably will use the 2.0, the new 2.0 art, because it's going to be released on Monday. There's no point in not showcasing the 2.0 art and the 2.0 editor, since it's just going to be a weekend away. And I know all of you are super excited about it. I am so done with doing streams with the 1.0 editor. I am so ready for 2.0. I'm excited to show every bit. Also, if you haven't already, go check out Becca, the Musical Rogue, and Beg, Borrow, and Steal. There is a great YouTube channel that also has some great videos. Just want to do a shout out to them. Becca, if you want, you'll feel free to post that link in the chat so people can go to it. Our own YouTube channel, Inkarnate, has hundreds of videos that you can kind of choose from. So definitely go check that out, or go check out Beg, Borrow, and Steal. They have some great videos there that are very, very helpful. Go check those out, okay? All right, everyone, thank you so much for bearing with me on this stream. I will see you all on Friday, and all hail 2.0 for Monday. Ooh, so exciting. Can barely wait. All right, everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and merry map making. I'll talk to you all later, all right? Bye.